Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is episode number 54. Joining me in studio is...
Just back from New Orleans, Trace Trylko. Hello, everyone.
I bet that was a cheery trip to be on.
I have now watched this team in 5 games play at home at Bright House. I've seen them at South Carolina and in New Orleans, and I have watched them on TV at Stanford. It's not pleasant in any way in which you watch.
All losses. 45-31, too little too late. Tulane over UCF.
Did you ever think you'd say that? Did you think that after 5 weeks you would have announced the scores in which Furman would win, FIU would win, and Tulane would win?
Well, I had hoped that I would never say that Furman had won. So, I mean, that's, still, I think, the one that hurts the most. This one is pretty close there, but I guess maybe we found a little bit more out about Tyler Harris.
You think?
A little bit. He threw the ball a lot better than I've ever seen him throw, and that is a good thing. I mean, I got to have something positive to say about something.
Do we want to start positive?
Yes, he was against the twos and the threes back there, but I think that even George O'Leary during his radio show today said that he saw a different Tyler Harris out there. The ball came out of his hand fast, which has never happened before. He's always held on to it way too long, so, whatever.
Well, can I ask you then, by contrast, are you suggesting that Bo Schneider is holding onto the ball a little bit too long? Is that a contrast that you're offering there?
Yeah, when you get sacked that many times, you're thinking too hard and you're trying to, do too much. You're just, there's no offensive line. That's the major problem.
That's a consistent part between Holman, Schneider, Harris.
Yeah,
is that lack of line, and that is not a 5-game problem. That is a multi-season problem.
Yeah. With minus 35 yards rushing, minus 35 yards. Minus.
Well, with the sack totals factored in, but if you just look at the individual
rushing, minus 35.
That's not going to cut it.
But 392 yards passing.
But a lot of that was garbage time minutes. I don't want to take anything away from Tyler and the way we saw some new faces emerge, some new stars perhaps in the making, but that was garbage time.
It was definitely, and some other players got out there the first time. We've burnt pretty much every freshman's red shirt.
Yes, we have.
I don't think we have many that aren't out there, except the one that's gray shirting as hurt on the offensive line. He may be one of the only ones. I don't think we've seen Aaron Cochran, the fullback, and we talked to him about that, here not too horribly long ago. I think that's about it, though. I don't know who else.
Well, it was certainly, you want to get through a game, you want to win, and you don't want to have injuries, and UCF did not accomplish either. It's a walking mash unit, player after player going down in that game. 7, wasn't it? 7 different players at some point experienced
I don't know.
Some sort of injury situation in that game?
I kind of at one point had it on in the background. I wasn't even really I couldn't take it I wanted to shut it off, to be honest with you, but I figured if I was to talk, going to know what happened in the game, I needed to watch the rest of it.
Well, then no doubt you were watching early when Tulane went on the fake punt with the big gain.
Yeah, and I
big turning point in the game.
Sent a tweet out right then, and I was like, "Oh yeah, see what creative play calling does for you, Coach Key." And I addressed it, to him.
To his Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get a response back yet?
Well, no.
Yeah. He's working on the game plan for UCON.
Yeah. Well, he better be. He needs to really, really be working.
Well,
on
but
it,
but what's interesting about that, right, is that in contrast, you had that Stanford game where they throw Bo Schneider into that 4th and 9, right? And then you had the 4th and 2 against Furman where they failed. But this was a good moment for Tulane to try that, and kudos to them for pulling it off. But how often do we see that sort of creativity in the play calling?
We've been burned by every trick play that anybody has pulled on us this year.
Another turning point for me, obviously, that catch that resulted in a fumble and Tulane returning it. That was a tough moment in the game.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. You mean the long throw that our wide receiver just totally didn't think about anybody coming up and taking the ball from him? Yeah.
That one.
Was that Johnson? I can't remember who it was, but that play was absolutely ridiculous. He should have held on to the ball. It was bad. It doesn't get much worse than that because he was holding the ball like a loaf of bread and didn't have two hands on it, only had one hand on it. I understand that, but if you're going to do that, you turn on the freaking burners, number one, and he didn't do that. Number two, you look around, situational awareness, you look around and see what's going on behind you. You have to look back at some point to see what's going on. He didn't do that. Now, that could easily be a young player mistake, but still, things like that should never happen.
Another turning point for me in the game is that we were moving the ball pretty effectively. Passing, pass after pass after pass, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you've been clamoring, and you're all over Twitter every game day, especially on the road games, saying, let Bo or whomever
let throw.
Just let him throw. And then they started throwing.
And then they abandoned the run because they didn't have any other choice.
Then they get in the red zone, right? Weren't they in the red zone?
Right.
And then they didn't abandon the run. Then they go back and they run for the 1 yard or the
right.
2.
Well, in the red zone, you have to be a lot more careful of turnovers, and that's that's just.
Well, they hardly seem careful of turnovers when you have 5.
No, I don't think a lot of those came in the red zone.
No, I know. I know.
But red zone turnovers are even.
And I get your point, but my point is, and then the run failed, first down, and then the run failed.
Well, it's going to fail every time with the offensive line that we have.
Second down. So
what
we were
what
moving
do you do?
down
You
moving
go
down
out
the
there
field, and
what do? You go out there every down and pass? We pretty much did.
Had to
for a long time.
Had to
in that game. Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess that's the only thing that you do.
So now what?
And this situation is not going to get better when Holman comes back. That situation with the offensive line is not going to improve.
There's no reason to think that it will.
No.
Right? You are kind of what you are after 5 games, aren't you? I mean, so what's going to change dramatically over the rest of the season? They're going to get it together?
I don't think anything's going to change, to be honest with you. I think a lot of in fact, some people gave up that were out there. Some players definitely gave up.
And having the perspective of being there, you can see that it was just listless, that there was not a lot of energy on the sideline.
I don't know what would push you to not do that, to be honest with you. I mean, when nothing's going your way, you can't do anything right. I mean, I understand that kids do that. It's unfortunate, but it happens.
Difficult to feed off of things that aren't going well, but again, they led, right? How many of these games have they led and then let that squander?
Let's hear what good old GOL has to say. George O'Leary has to say about this, which is not much, to be honest with you.
Well, you can't turn it over 5 times and give up easy scores as far as really turn it over and stuff. And I thought we put some subs in the second half, and they went out and got some things done and stuff like that. But overall, we're very sloppy in tackling, very sloppy in missed assignments, and you can't win games like that. I think some penalties earlier that we shouldn't have had, but I think the big thing is that I saw some kids come in the latter part of the game and make some plays, and I think that's what's important. But obviously, a disappointing loss, and but again, if you look at penalties, turnovers, that's usually an indicator of what's going on.
Well, there you have it. The wise words of George O'Leary.
Ultimately, the players are responsible for how they play the game, but
the
where
coaches
is
are responsible
the accountability for the coaching?
Them. Yeah, the coaches are responsible for preparing the players to play the game and coaching the players to get better. And I don't see any of that happening. I don't see it.
I know you're big on Twitter, and you talk to a lot of people. They message you, and you message back directly. I play around a little bit more on Facebook, and I've had people message me. One was, this is the worst team of the George O'Leary era, bar none. and the worst offensive and defensive lines that he's had. And another gentleman that I talked to from North Carolina said, the buck stops at the top. And if this were any other organization, where are the changes? And we talked about that a week ago, right? What changes? No changes coming, right?
No, they're not going to do anything.
And that's what's frustrating to fans. So if you have somebody in your own business, folks listening, their own business or where they work, somebody's not performing, it's not the right role for them, then you find a better fit, right? You try and find a better fit.
They're not going to fire O'Leary.
No, and I'm not clamoring for that here. I'm not.
A lot of people are.
But I do think the coaching decisions involving Brent Key really are under a microscope.
Well, yeah. Later on when we talk to Kyle Israel, we talk a little bit about the play calling and things like that going on, and he has quite a bit to say about that. Maybe an interesting thing to say about that that will maybe shock you.
Oh.
So
me and our listeners?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. That's good. That's good tease right there.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well,
I can't wait now.
I'm trying. I did record Kyle's thing earlier, and you weren't here because you just literally got in from the airport.
That's my dedication to you, Andrew Phegley.
I appreciate that.
Right there in the Knightline podcast, from airport to studios.
And it's late on Sunday evening when we're doing this, and yeah. So I wanted to make it as quality as we could, though, and not have you call in and have you actually be here. So
did you know that UCF is one of only 5 teams still winless?
Yeah, and I don't want to mention one of them.
Okay, I will mention 3 of them.
One of them is my alma mater.
Sorry about you're not having a good football season so
my
far.
Chiefs can't win.
Wyoming, New Mexico State, North Texas, and
Kansas. Yeah.
0-5.
Yeah.
And just so you know, UCF has to go 6-1 now to become bowl eligible.
I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said last week, 0-12. And I mentioned on Twitter that I wasn't going to shave until they win. I don't know about that. I may have to go back on that because
what do your family and friends think of that? Did you really say that?
I did.
I did not
say that. And I posted a picture of myself. Yeah, it's probably not the greatest idea. I don't. If Twitter land out there will let me take
Was that starting
back.
This week, or did you said that previous week?
Well, I haven't shaved in quite a while, so I think this is for 3 or 4, maybe 4 weeks probably going on.
That's interesting.
But I'm going to look like one of those guys off the Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to. If 12 weeks or more, I'm going to look like
Wait, so if they go the whole season winless, you don't shave until next football season?
No. I meant I would not shave until after the season was over. But I honestly don't think that's going to happen. My boss is probably going to have something to say about that. So if I do shave, I take that back.
So you don't have confidence that UCF's going to take you off the hook. It's your boss who's going to say, hey, what's going on here?
Like I said last week, 0-12. I don't see us winning a game. I really don't. Unless something miraculous happens, and it's not going to.
I'm interested in this particular thing that you've posted, but I think a little bit more interesting to fans locally in Central Florida is that a local tavern, The Basement in Orlando, that's gotten all kinds of publicity. That went viral during the week. They are offering free beer during every UCF game until UCF
Well, that's a bad business decision. They're going to go bankrupt. I mean, they could easily go bankrupt. A small business, and who knows how many people showed up there.
From what
if
I saw on
knows
social
how many
media,
people,
there were about 50 people that watched the game there on Saturday.
That's...
And apparently, one of the numbers I saw was more than 300 beers were distributed.
Wow. Yeah, that's not good. Unless hopefully some beer company like Orlando Brewing or somebody is giving them the beer to do that.
Oh, wouldn't that be? I mean, I don't know a whole lot about The Basement in Orlando, but I don't think it's craft beer that they're giving out.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. No, it was like a Bud Light-ish thing.
Yeah.
It's probably Natural Light or something like that.
Yeah.
But, whatever. Still, that stuff's expensive.
So what's more interesting? I think if you're there and you get the free beer, that's good, but I kind of like the beer thing. I like the beer challenge.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I shouldn't have. I don't normally take anything back that I say. I mean, that's normally when I say something, but it's itching. Nobody likes it. So,
and
I have gotten some nice compliments from other men though. Wow, the beard, man. that's nice to get from another guy.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a better compliment, because they're like, man, I wish I could grow a beard like that. I can only grow like chops or something.
Hey, weigh in and don't shave until UCF wins, and you too.
Yeah, I mean,
may be able to.
I might get fired though if I do that. So
I feel a buzz as I return to Central Florida that it's Civil Conflict Week, and UConn comes to town, no doubt dragging that trophy that they put together for this thing. And so we're going to have a UConn insider coming up to break down the Huskies. But earlier in the day, you had an opportunity to speak with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel. And as you teased a few moments ago, and I'm looking forward to this now, what he says may surprise listeners.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando. Joined again by Kyle Israel. Kyle, before we dig into doing a little bit more analysis here, your initial reaction to Saturday's loss to Tulane?
Well, I think my initial reaction is obviously disappointed. I think that the attrition in regards to injuries, I think that the youth at positions all over the field, really skill positions, and then the injuries that you saw throughout the course of the game. I mean, just probably one of the more disappointing games that I've seen in UCF in a long time in regards to really giving that game away. Turnovers being a huge factor in that ball game. Tulane scoring the majority of their points off turnovers. But disappointing loss, to say the least.
Well, speaking of turnovers, it's easy to start with quarterback Bo Schneider. He had 3 interceptions, part of a 5-turnover day for UCF. But let's begin with the absence of the running game, with sack yardage figured in. And by the way, Tulane had 7 sacks. UCF had a minus 35 yards on the ground. What is wrong with the running game?
Well, I mean, in this game, you're never able to establish the running game, and you get down, in that ball game fairly early there in the second quarter. I mean, it looks like UCF has momentum. We're going in again with with what looks to be a touchdown. And, wide receiver, I believe it was number 81, Chris Johnson, gets stripped going in to score, almost looked like he was coasting, and the ball goes the other way. I think we're able to go up at that point in the game and have some momentum on a long touchdown pass. That would have given Bo Schneider some more confidence right there. But, I think that the turnovers led to so many points for Tulane, and it's hard when you're a true freshman quarterback like Bo Schneider and your team is all of a sudden down and you're getting no help from the offensive line. I mean, I will say this, and I've danced around it all year and tried to be as kind as possible with my words, but this is by far the worst offensive line we've ever had. And that's probably a pretty strong statement, and I don't like saying that. But the fact is the fact, going back and watching the game, I just watched it recorded, and I've never seen us play so bad offensive line-wise. Now, I don't know what the reason for that. I don't know if we don't have the players to get it done. Guys look lost sometimes. But I feel bad for Bo because he took a lot of pounding. When you have happy feedback there, and your eyes, for quarterback's eyes, start to come down to the defensive line when you're starting to get so much pressure and you're starting to feel that pressure and you can't focus on what you're trying to do downfield because you know that there's a chance somebody's coming free. And that just makes playing the position for anybody at any age difficult. And mix that with him being a true freshman and not having some of his key guys on the outside, it makes it very tough. So the turnovers leading to so many Tulane points is clearly the difference in the ball game. But I feel bad for Bo Schneider, to be honest.
I absolutely do, too. In fact, I was at one point during the game, I almost just wished that they would take him out before they actually did, because I felt bad for him. I felt that, like you said, he wasn't able to look past the line there and see what was going on. One of the sacks that he had and one of the interceptions as well was he heard feet coming and, just kind of didn't have any idea what to do. And I understand that. That's, kind of what happens, especially with a young guy.
Yeah, the interceptions, I mean, 2 of them were ones on 3rd and long where you're just trying to put the ball down the field. I mean, when teams know you got to throw the ball down the field, they're going to play soft, and we got to pick up 16, 18 yards. There was one series where it was 4th and 23, and we were trying to convert. Both of them, it's not like you draw up 16, 18-yard, 23-yard plays. I mean, we just don't have the speed outside to threaten anybody vertically, and we don't have the type of guys that are going to catch the ball at 10 yards and get another 8 or 10 after the catch. We just don't have them. So, some of those interceptions were kind of like long punts almost. And then he had the one that was high on the slant route. But I will tell you, in rewatching the game, I was fairly impressed with Brett Key's game plan. The way that we were throwing the football in regards to using these deeper slant routes and hitting some of the out routes. Using Jordan Franks over the middle of the field as a larger 6'3", 220 receiver. I thought that we had a really actually solid passing game plan, and we executed it at times. But ultimately, if you can't protect the passer, then it makes it all difficult. And I go back to that huge momentum shift there in the second quarter when Chris Johnson gets run down from behind and stripped. I haven't seen anything like that since like the 1992 national championship game, Miami versus Alabama, when the Alabama player ran down the Miami guy down the sideline and stripped the ball and took it away.
Yeah, he had the ball in one hand. He obviously wasn't paying attention. He thought he was looking ahead to where he was going and not looking at all behind him to see what was coming. It's clear, that's a young player mistake for sure, but a mistake that should not happen. It's a fundamental of football to know how to hold on to the ball.
That's a 14-point swing in that ball game. We're going in to score. They strip it, return it all the way to their own side of the field, and then go in and score right after it. That's a huge swing in a game, and even that could have been the difference in the ball game in regards to just momentum and points and those sorts of things.
You mentioned the game, the way that it was called by Coach Key.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people know that I'm not a big fan of Coach Key. And I don't think there's a lot that are left, to be honest with you. But I think that what happened personally, I was watching it, and when the running game didn't work at all, it was just not going anywhere. They abandoned the running game completely, as far as I'm concerned. And all of a sudden, Bo is able to throw the ball down the field, which they had been keeping him from before, because they kept trying the running game, and it started to work. And the thing that I think is, why didn't we do that a little quicker? When we saw that the running game wasn't working, it could have happened a little bit quicker. I mean, that defense was totally on their heels for us when he started throwing the ball. They didn't expect it. They didn't, it almost looked at points where they didn't know what to do. So I just personally think that we should have gone there a little bit quicker, but with a young quarterback, how hard is that to do? Just, open it up and let him throw like that.
Try to protect him and literally protect him with the offensive line. I think that a lot of the passing game early on was getting the ball out of Bo's hands on these slant routes and just simple flat defender reads. If the outside linebacker takes the route out into the flat, you're throwing the slant behind him. And I thought that was good game planning for what Tulane was doing with the soft coverage that we were getting from their corners. Down the field passes further down the field. I mean, you saw Bo complete a 3rd and 20-something first down to Jordan Franks from his own end zone. I thought that was an impressive throw there early on. But I think they've always known Bo is a guy that can deliver the football down the field, but he has no escapability, let's face it, in regards to his speed. Zero, like literally zero. And you have a soft offensive line that, makes it very difficult to sit back there in the pocket for 1, 2, for 3 seconds to be able to deliver the ball down the field. And on top of that, you got young receivers who aren't getting a ton of separation. So I like the initial pass game plan and getting the ball out of his hands, but when you get behind the sticks and you take a sack or you run for a loss at yards, I mean, it's just hard when you have no confidence in your offensive line to be the quarterback time. And I think that, Bo and Coach Key were hands were tied in that regard.
I hear you. UCF is struggling noticeable on both sides of the ball. Tulane's quarterbacks were sacked only once on the day. Meantime, the Green Wave running backs rushed for nearly 200 yards. Why are there so many struggles?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have all the answers for you there, but we're obviously struggling in tackling. It's very obvious. I could see Coach O'Leary irate on the sideline with number 25, who on one of the touchdowns just kind of almost Pop Warner-ish just dove at the guy, no arms out, and he made a move on him and scored. But we're just struggling tackling. I don't have the answer for why that's an issue, other than, in my opinion, that I know we're coaching it. It's not like something that's not being coached. I know that it's an emphasis. It's like, I can only say that the players aren't executing, and potentially a lack of talent and youth.
Well,
there's a lot of people on the field right now, Andrew, a lot of people on the field that should not be there. Whether that's because of injury, whether that's because of graduation, whether that's because of lack of experience, whether that's because Coach O'Leary is frustrated and just trying to see who can step up and make plays. There are a lot of people on offense and defense that should still be on the scout field at this point in their careers, and unfortunately, because of the attrition on our team, they're on the field, and it shows.
Yeah, understandable. I hate to bring this up, and you may not even want to answer this, but do you feel – I almost feel like, especially on the defensive side, I think it feels like, and it looked like some of those guys were kind of I don't know, I hate to use this term, but kind of giving it up, just totally like, we're going to lose this game. It's over. I'm not going to play my hardest. I'm not going to get hurt, whatever. I don't know if that happened on the offensive side of the ball, but I could kind of see that happening on the defensive side of the ball.
I'm sure it's frustrating, and I was a part of an 11 team. Now, the difference was it was at the beginning of Coach O'Leary's era. We were playing 22 true freshmen. Guys like Brandon Marshall and Mike Sims-Walker, we had so much of a lack of talent, and so many guys had left the program the year before that those two guys who ended up being NFL receivers were actually playing on the defensive side of the football, Mike Walker at corner and Brandon Marshall at safety. To give you a little bit of insight as to where we were at the time from an athlete standpoint, we just needed to fill gaps, and those were the only guys that could do it. But when you're going through a season like this, it's only human nature to start to feel like nothing can go right and to get discouraged. And I actually think that our team has played. I think that they've played at the beginning of games better and more motivated than I think many teams in the country at this point will be playing with this record and the losses that we have.
I agree.
But you're going to see that. You're probably going to see that late in the game against Tulane when we're getting blown out. It's human nature to kind of look around and not give your all. And that's not to say that's the right thing to do. But to think that you're going to have 22 guys playing full effort when you're potentially about to go 0-5 against a team that you think you're going to go and beat, especially the way that it happened with the turnovers. The defense was put in horrible field position throughout the game. I mean, any time that we actually had the normal sequence of downs where we punted to Tulane or kicked it off to them, our defense plays fairly well. But when you put them in such horrible field position, I mean, there's only so much that they can do. And, for a team that plays a general bend-don't-break defense, that field position becomes crucial. And we didn't have it yesterday. So, I think we've played fairly well, in the beginning of games. But one thing's led to another. And when you're losing football games like that, there's going to be some discouragement. And I think that it was seen there, you're correct, there in the second half. And unfortunately, all you can do is start to play for pride at this point and start to play to show the coaches that you're the guy that belongs on the field. And that would be my challenge to the players, that, you got to play for each other and you got to play for yourself, and that, we don't have the names in the back of our jersey, but you got to represent your family's name to the best of your ability at all times, no matter the situation. And that's what I would challenge the players to do moving forward. All
right, that's perfect. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Now to a little bit of a positive. Quarterback Tyler Harris came off the bench to go 10 of 15, 3 touchdown passes. Snyder started and finished with 20 of 37 with 1 TD pass and 3 picks. Justin Holman made the trip to South Carolina last week, did not even make the trip to New Orleans this week. Who starts Sunday versus UConn?
Your guess is as good as mine. At this point, I have no idea. At this point, I would reward Tyler Harris for the way that he came into that game. If you're going to say that Justin Holman potentially is going to take a redshirt this year, that's complete speculation, and I have no information that backs that up. But that's something I would maybe consider. I would reward Tyler Harris and say, hey, you came into the game, you didn't hang your head, you were positive, and you went down and you threw 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Now, granted, it was against the Tulane backups, but nonetheless, you executed the playbook fairly well. You made some really good, sharp passes. I thought he threw a great ball on that first touchdown pass he threw on that post route for a touchdown. UConn is a very good football team. And there were so many people in our program, including myself, making jokes this offseason about how UConn said this was a rivalry game and created a trophy and all these things. And we said, you don't belong with us. And this game means nothing to us other than just another conference game, which is how it'll be treated inside the program. But UConn's a very, very good football team. And if we're going to beat UConn at home next weekend, we're going to have to play the best game that we've played this season. Now, I would put the guy on the field that's going to give us our best chance to win. But ultimately, they both got to play behind the same offensive line, and if that doesn't get cleaned up, then we're in trouble all the way around. Because with the lack of skill players that we have on the outside, because so many guys graduated last year, you're going to have time, and you're going to have to be able to run the football. And we just can't do that right now. And I think that offensively it starts up front, and we're really struggling. I mean, I don't think that we identified who our starting center is. I think we had the second or third new center start for us. You saw Justin Ray at center later on in the game. I just don't know if our offensive line has any continuity. And before we can see any success long-term at the quarterback position, we got to get that cleaned up. But I would go ahead and start Tyler Harris and give him the opportunity to see what he can do, just based on what I saw at the end of the game, and see what can happen.
Yeah, those are my thoughts as well. I'm glad that we agree on some stuff for sure.
It's not that Bo Schneider has been playing completely bad, but you just can't recover from turnovers, and when you're playing behind an offensive line, it can't give you the protection that you need. You need somebody that can at least move around a little bit, and Bo just can't.
Yeah,
just cannot move.
Coach O'Leary actually said, I was reading the transcript from his radio show today, and he said that he liked how Tyler Harris threw the ball, and he did something that he hasn't seen him do yet in that game, that the ball was coming off his hand quickly. He wasn't holding on to it. He was just making his throws. And I think that is what made a difference. He was throwing the ball hard. Like when I watched a lot of times him in practice, his balls were dead ducks. He'd throw it and it wouldn't quite get there. It was wobbly, but in this game, I saw Tyler Harris throw that ball totally differently than I've seen him throw it before. And I don't know if he's been coached up on something or something clicked or what, but Tyler Harris was a different quarterback. Another thing, though, you said something back when we were talking about that last question that made me think. Is some of this stuff mental? I mean, is some of losing, when it gets to this point, at 0-5, are you almost trying so hard sometimes that you make bad mistakes, you make kind of dumb mistakes, and you're trying too hard? Does that happen when a team gets to be 0-5?
I don't know. I certainly can't answer that question from a defensive perspective. Maybe you could. But I can't say from a quarterback's perspective, there is a certain amount of pressure that you feel. And let me tell you something, it's not a good feeling to walk around campus being a starting quarterback for an 0-5 football team. And so I think that you push a little bit. You feel like you may start to look over your shoulder. And I respect Coach O'Leary for how he's handled Bo Schneider and said, you're the guy going forward. He let him play a long time in that football game. But I think that for Tyler Harris, when you come in at that point in the game, there's not a whole lot to lose. the comfort level obviously is certainly there because, all you got to do is go out and deliver the football, and the expectations aren't there. And that can lead to a lot of things: comfort in delivering the football down the field, comfort in the decision-making process, and you've had an opportunity to sit for 3 quarters and kind of see what the other team is doing, knowing that you're going to go in and play against soft coverage. So, it is mental when you're struggling for both quarterbacks. And I think there would even be, if you saw Justin Holman next week, there would even be an added element of pressure to him because everybody's kind of said at this point, you're the guy that's going to come in and save us, and then there's a whole other level of pressure. And it depends whether or not guys let that pressure get to them, but it's certainly there and noticeable.
Why would Justin Holman not even make the trip? Do you have any idea about that?
It could be strictly numbers. If they knew that he wasn't going to play in the game and they needed to have some extra guys travel because of defense or some extra guys travel that were backups on offense, it could be strictly that. It may not, we couldn't look into it and analyze it all day long, but it could just be a numbers game for an away game where some other injuries took place on the team and we had to have some other guys there to back them up. Because you can only travel with so many per NCAA regulations. So it could have been that. And what it does tell me for sure is that there was no expectation for him to ever play in that football game. Because I'm sure if Coach thought that he was healthy enough to play, he potentially would have. And if he was healthy enough to start, then I'm sure he certainly would have. So I think it came down to a numbers game in regards to other positions needing to have that extra body.
Keeping with the Holman thing just for a second here, another question that I thought about during the game. What does it take when you have a hand injury like that? It's his index finger on his throwing hand. Why is that index finger so important? And, what does that do to you? Maybe if it's not 100% and strong, after it was broken, what is he going to be missing? And what are the things that he struggles, through in the future here?
So every quarterback throws the ball a tiny bit different. For example, the pressure point on the football when I'm throwing the ball, because I have a little bit smaller hands, is my ring finger. But every quarterback guides the football, and the last thing that usually touches the football is your index finger. So, I don't think that we've got any type of clear answer as to what the actual injury is with Justin Holman. Was it a compound fracture initially? Then if that was the case, he was never coming back in 2 or 3 weeks. Coach can say all day that the suture is out and that his cut is healing, but that doesn't mean that the fracture is better. So figuring out what the injury actually was initially can give some better insight to that. But if you have a weak index finger as a quarterback, you're not going to have the accuracy. You're not even going to have the type of grip that you would have, just flat out holding the football. And so if you have a weak index finger, one that's broken and trying to heal, then it certainly affects every aspect from catching the ball, in the shotgun to, there's a certain amount of velocity when you're holding the ball and through the throwing motion, bring it all the way back behind your head. You still have to grip the heck out of it. And then to deliver it, the index finger guides the entire football and where it's going. So that's got to be strong. And if that was a compound fracture being the key word there, I'm not sure that he was ever going to be ready in 2 to 3 weeks, and certainly, pushing it to get back in 4 to 6 weeks. So many people say, well, he's got a cut, and that needs to heal. Okay, fine. But if it's a fracture, then it's going to be hard to play with a broken index finger.
Yeah, I've broken bones before in my life. I also work in the medical industry, if those of you that don't know, and I work in a hospital, I work in an emergency room, and I see fractures every day, and I see those people return to get those things checked on, especially people, that can't afford to go to an orthopedic doctor and stuff like that. I understand how long, and there are, this team has, some access to some good medical technology of getting that stuff fixed. But when Coach O'Leary said 2 to 4 weeks, I was one of the first people, I'm sure, to be like, that is absolute crap. I don't believe it. 2 to 4 weeks is ridiculous for any fracture of any kind. So I've never believed that in the first place. Now that leads me to another question here real quick. You mentioned earlier the possibility of a red shirt. Now, is that I think I'm right as being if they didn't play past the third game, they could take a medical red shirt possibly, right?
I do believe that is the rule, because that is something I was trying to consider in 2005 when I ended up burning my red shirt coming off a broken tibia. The explanation that I got as to why I couldn't apply for that medical red shirt at the end of my career was that it was for the fact that I played against Southern Miss, and I think that was like the fifth or sixth game of the season, and it needed to be in the first three. Now, that was 8 years ago, and NCAA rules have changed, but I do believe, based on the explanation that I received at that point in time, that Justin Holman still would be eligible for a medical red shirt, but there's a whole application process that you have to go through, and the NCAA has to approve it. But I think that chance is potentially there based on my prior knowledge, and I couldn't tell you today if that rule is still the same. If you step on the field and play one play, no matter when, what game, your normal red shirt opportunity is gone.
So if he was to come back and even play one play, that opportunity would be gone.
At this point in time, the way that I understand the rule, if he were to come back at all this season and play, then I believe his medical redshirt opportunity would at that point be forfeited.
Well,
because it happened versus Stanford in the second game, I do believe if we don't see him again that he could still apply for that medical redshirt.
With a season that looks like it's going to turn out the way that it is, that may not be a bad option. And I hope that maybe, to be honest with you, that they're considering that. You said
so am I, because you think of you look at there's a lot of people the last year and a half, 2 years. When I say a lot of people, you've got these guys on message boards, and I'm on message boards. I like to keep up with what's going on in the program, but a lot of people thought that Bo Schneider was our savior. Even at some point that Tyler Harris was, and I think Justin Holman is clearly the best quarterback in our program. And if you can have him for one extra season, especially when you see that we're 0-5, the bowl game doesn't seem likely. Maybe he's a guy we'd like to have around, 2 years from now as our starter, rather than put him back just to, win some games this year.
All right, I understand completely, and I hope that they're looking at that. All right, so winless, and UConn comes in Saturday. What will it take to right the ship? I mean, what is there possibility left to do to make this a little bit better? I don't know if it's going to happen, to be honest with you.
Well, I can certainly tell you that we cannot turn the ball over the ways that we have. I mean, we've been in football games in the first half of these games. Yesterday, not so much. But in the FIU game, in the Furman game, in the South Carolina game, we're winning at halftime, and turnovers killed us. So we have to protect the football, whether that's and that goes for everybody, running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks. And we cannot put our defense in difficult situations when we're not giving them an opportunity to do their job. And, I don't think our defense is stout enough to put them on a short field throughout the course of the game and expect the other teams just to either kick field goals or not get any points. So for me, I think if we can go and have a turnover-free football game, we can beat UConn. I really believe that. But if we turn the ball over and put our defense in bad positions, then I don't see how we can beat UConn. And that's not anything new, right? Everybody knows that the turnovers are so crucial to the success or lack thereof for teams. But it's just very evident for us because we've seen what it has done to us in the last two games, the second half of South Carolina, throughout the course of the game yesterday. So if we can not turn the ball over, and if we can continue to throw the ball like we did yesterday when we didn't have pressure, and game plan as well as I think we did going into that game yesterday. I really, really want to reiterate that I thought we had a good game plan, for what Tulane was doing defensively. Then I think that we can make it a good game and hopefully pull one out. But it's all going to – I'm sure the athletic training room today is just packed with guys. There was guys leaving the game yesterday. Jordan Franks, I hope he's doing all right. There's a couple other receivers that were banged up. So can we get healthy this week at all? number one, and let's not turn the football over. I think we got a shot to beat UConn.
Absolutely. All righty, Kyle. I came out and saw you the other day at the Little Greek. The food was absolutely tremendous. It was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool.
What's going on there this week at the Little Greek? Anything different?
Nothing different. We, I do want to reiterate that catering for us is something we're really trying to push. So if you're looking for catering options, and if you're in medical sales or you work out in Research Park or at Lockheed Martin or at Aon or Siemens, we'd love to do some catering for you. If it is for the right size group, we will deliver the catering. We have done some catering deliveries to downtown Orlando if you have 15 guests or more. But catering is a big thing for us. Business has been really, really good this week. This is probably going to be the best we've ever had. We anticipated that getting back into October. And for anybody that's been out, we certainly appreciate the support.
Yeah, it is awesome. I can't wait to get back out there. I'm going to take the family out there. The food is absolutely wonderful. The fries, people. If you like French fries, they have fresh fries, and they are absolutely awesome. I know that's, not the emphasis, but they are extremely good. Good Greek food at a good price. And, a nice little environment, and you can go in there and talk to Kyle Israel, so definitely get out there. Kyle, thank you so much again. I know that this gets harder and harder by the week to do, but I appreciate you give us incredible value information, and I appreciate you being on again.
Yeah, it was good catching up with Andrew this week. Thanks for coming out, and, we'll just keep plugging along. And hopefully, we get a fan base out that's there just to support the players, whether you're upset with the program or not at this point. Let's get out and support these guys because they are still working hard week in and week out, and they are still student athletes. So I hope to see everybody at the game this week, and check on.
Yeah, I have heard a lot of people talking about, not going and stuff like that, and I don't think that's the answer here, people. It's not.
And let me say this. People are calling for George O'Leary's job. George O'Leary's not going to be fired. So for anybody that thinks that Dr. Hitt or somebody needs to pull the trigger, that's not going to happen. I can tell you that right now.
You're absolutely right there.
And you and I discussed that the other day. Coach O'Leary's not going anywhere in that regard. So let's just hope that we can get these players healthy and that we can get this thing turned around, because despite the petition and everything else that's going on, we've heard this song before, and then you win a Fiesta Bowl and conference championships. You can't forget all those things just because we're struggling, especially in the current situation that this team is struggling. If we were completely healthy, Andrew, and if we were, not so young, but, we have the youngest team almost in the country, and we're tons of injuries, and that's just a very tough environment to coach in. And, I don't think that us saying that we need to clean house and fire everybody is the solution. And so let's keep that in mind. But, you might as well stop talking about it now because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree. All righty. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay, sounds good.
So you travel a lot for work and fun. Have you ever thought about having just a little bit more insurance? TravelX gives you the peace of mind so you can take care of your family and loved ones. Click the link on our webpage. I'm just saying, accidents happen. All right, so what else happened in the American this week? I'm sure some people won, and we suck and all that. So.
Well, Cincinnati with a big win of the week, beat Miami of Florida on Thursday Night Football. American now 5-11 against the Power 5 teams. Number of teams that are undefeated. Memphis 5-0. They beat the Cows on Friday night, 24-17. Temple 4-0, 37-3 over Charlotte. Houston 4-0, 38-24 over Tulsa. Navy 4-0. They beat Air Force 33-11, and East Carolina just zoomed past SMU 49-23. Probably the worst loss, besides the UCF loss, is BYU put up 20 fourth-quarter points to beat this week's opponent at Bright House, UConn, 30-13.
Great. That's just
You're just enthused.
Well, no, I mean I'm pretty down about all this.
It's
hard
definitely. It's hard to get motivated by it. I got a message today from somebody and said, "It got to be hard to go do this with this kind of losing streak."
I thought about not, to be honest with you. This is way more difficult to do when you're not enthused about the product. Hopefully basketball will be good this year. I say that a little tongue in cheek. I don't know.
We got to carry on.
Yeah.
Got to carry on.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Alrighty, well, let's talk to our guy from UConn this week in our 5 questions segment. 5 questions with an insider, getting to know this week's opponent. The Connecticut Huskies come to the Bright House on Saturday. UConn is coming off a 30-13 loss at BYU. Joining us to preview Saturday's matchup is freelance writer Ken Davis. Ken has covered UConn basketball and football since 1985 and writes about the Huskies and the American for FanRagSports.com. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
UConn hung with BYU until 20 Cougars points in the fourth quarter sent the Huskies to 2-3 this season. Talk about where UConn is after 5 games.
Well, I think they're about where everybody expected them to be. It was absolutely mandatory that they win those first 2 games at home against Villanova, which is a strong FCS team, and then Army, who had beaten them last year. So those weren't sure wins going into it. They beat Villanova 20-15 and Army 22-17. So that was a big lift because the rest of the early season schedule was so tough with games at Missouri and at BYU. They lost at Missouri 9-6. They had sort of a chance to win that game. I mean, they were in it much more than anybody thought because going into a sort of a Southeastern Conference. I still don't really consider Missouri a Southeastern Conference team yet, but that's because I'm a Kansas grad. But
well, that's something that we both have in common, and we were talking about that before we came on. So I was rooting for UConn, of course. I will root for anybody. I root for UCF, Kansas, and anybody who plays Missouri. That's it.
Exactly. Those things go deep, and a lot of people don't understand it goes all the way back to the Civil War, but that's another story. But anyway, they had a chance at Missouri. They ran a fake field goal that wasn't executed well. Then they played Navy back at home, and I just can't comprehend why Navy quarterback Keenan Reynolds isn't getting more attention in the Heisman race because he's just incredible. I really love watching this kid play. He's pretty. I don't know. I didn't see what they did this last weekend. I don't know how many TDs he had, but and he's going to become the all-time leading rushing touchdown in the history of college football. So, I mean, I know that it's triple option and it's set up that way for him, but he's an amazing athlete and a really, really great kid. So they lost that one, and then they went up to BYU. So they've lost 3 in a row. I wasn't at BYU. I'm sure that the morale is down a little bit, but if it just shows how important. And I talked to George O'Leary about this topic in Newport on Media Day for the AAC, and about the importance of getting off to a good start. And obviously, I think you can see it with UCF now that the way they were shocked in the first game, and I would assume the morale and the mentality is dropped off a little bit. And so you've got to win those early games that you're expected to win. Then you ramp it up a little bit. And since UConn went 2-10 last year, everyone up here thought it was just very important for them to come out at least 2-3. And they really, it's like Bob Diaco said last week, they had a chance. I would say they didn't really have a chance to win the BYU game the way it unraveled, but they had a chance to be 4-0. They had a chance to beat Missouri, and they just didn't execute very well against Navy. Most of the problem is offensive execution right now. But I think the fact that they're 2-3 gives them a little bit of hope going into the rest of the conference season. It's not going to be easy, obviously, with a lot of these teams putting up a lot of points on the board. But I think when a team goes 2-10 like it did last year and just really didn't represent itself well at all, it was very important to get those wins and have a little bit to hang on to now at this point. So they just need to get some things corrected execution-wise. They haven't had a lot of really serious injuries or anything, so they're still in pretty good shape that way. It's a much better team than last year, but it's still not a real good team.
Arkeel Newsom was Friday night's standout. 13 carries for 68 yards on the ground and another 63 yards on 4 receptions for a touchdown. Who are the keys for the offense on the Huskies?
Well, Arkeel's making a lot of progress, and he's just a sophomore, and he's a little guy at 5'7", but he's really shifty. He's got a lot of great moves. When they can get him into the open field, he can do a lot of damage because he can create so much stuff for himself. The new quarterback is Bryant Sheriffs, and he's a transfer from North Carolina State, who is probably the best quarterback they've had now since Don Orlovsky. That's going back a long ways, but they've had a rough patch with 2 or 3 years in a row where they've gone in to the first game with 3 guys still in the running for the starting position. And this year, Bryant really took control in the spring and had the best spring of any of the quarterbacks, and then had a good preseason camp, and it was very clear that he was the guy. And there's none of that debate this year, which is really good. So, and he's got a lot of young receivers like Noel Thomas, Thomas Lucas. Tariq Beals has really shown a lot as a true freshman. He's got great hands and can pick up a lot of yards after catching the ball. They got a couple of tight ends that they started off the season throwing to. Tommy Myers, who's a redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 255, a really good athlete. He played basketball. He's a local kid from just a few miles from the UCON campus. And the other tight end is Alec Bloom, who has been mixed in here and there, and they're both capable of catching balls. So I think they've been focusing on them doing a lot more blocking because the offensive line is struggling, and so they need to do that blocking. But definitely Arkeel Newsom is becoming more of a threat. Ron Johnson, the other tailback, has had some good moments during the year, and it's all revolving around Bryant Sheriffs, who has really made a lot better decisions. He had a bad interception against BYU. He knew he was about to get hit, and he threw a pass he should have held on to, and that ended up being a big interception. But he's a real competitor. He's got talent. He's athletic, and you can see that he's become a leader on this team. So I think there's some improvement there. But like I said, the offensive line has kind of let them down a little bit to this point.
Well, the defense have definitely had its moments. A couple of weeks ago, a tough 9-6 loss at top 25 ranked Mizzou, unfortunately. Who are the other players on UConn's defense that may be challenging for UCF's struggling offense?
They've got a good secondary once again, and the last year's defense was okay, but this defense has moved up. I didn't see the rankings after the BYU game yet, but they're in the top 20 in scoring defense and yards per game defense, and they've been pretty stingy. I mean, when you go to a place like Mizzou, which they don't see scenes like that too often, and to keep that game at 9-6 when there was a safety, Missouri scored on a safety first on a blocked punt, so they didn't give up hardly anything offensively, and so that was very impressive. And they're back to where they were defensively at the end of the Randy Edsall era and the beginning of the Paul Pasqualoni era. I mean, people complained about Paul Pasqualoni, but it was mostly his conservative offensive strategies. The defense has always been pretty strong here since they became a Division 1A or a FBS program. But to answer your question about people, the leader is Andrew Adams, who's a senior and a captain, a strong safety, and that was one of the reasons why it was disappointing at BYU. And since I wasn't at the game, I haven't heard what his explanation was for this, but there was an incomplete pass, and he was in coverage, and the ball was out of bounds, and he went over and just kicked it like he was trying to kick it up into the crowd for some reason. He kicked it twice, so it was going away from the official, and that's an automatic unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and it cost UConn big time. They scored right after that. But Andrew's a good guy who's usually in the right place at the right time, and then they got cornerback Javon Williams is off to a good start, and the other safety, Obi Melifoanu, is is a very talented up-and-coming player, and Jamar Summers has played better lately. So they're really good in the secondary. The linebackers have done all right. Graham Stewart, Junior Joseph is, I think, the team's leading tackler. You'll hear his name called a lot. Marquise Van is been a little injured, and he has given up times to Matt Walsh, who was an offensive player one time, and then they're getting it done there in the linebacker crew pretty much. And the defensive line is capable of getting some sacks and getting some pressure on, but they've like I said, against Keenan Reynolds, they just couldn't stop that guy. He's just so fast and so complicated in the triple option. But you're looking mostly at the linebacker. Julian Campini is having a great season at defensive tackle so far, and he's a senior too. So they've got a little mix of experience and youth, and the defense has done a pretty adequate job all the way around. And even in the BYU game, they didn't really surrender a lot of big plays. So they don't give up those big plays too often, and they're just pretty solid in all areas.
All right, what's your take on the UConn special teams?
They've struggled. I mentioned the blocked punt at Missouri, and then they've had some bad decisions on returns, and the field goal kickers have been a problem. That's why he went for the fake field goal in the Missouri game, because he didn't have a lot of confidence. Bobby Puyol is a redshirt junior, and he is. I think he has the capability of hitting in the 40 to 48 range, but I don't think Coach Diaco has a lot of confidence. Bobby hit, I think, both of his field goals on against BYU on Friday, so maybe that'll help a little bit in the confidence there. And they have the guy that does kickoffs, Michael Tarbut, is a freshman, and he is. They were using as the longer field goal guy, but it's been kind of a mess there. And the punter, Justin Wayne, was a really fine punter in the AAC last year. He's had a few bad ones too, so it's been a little bit of a mess. I think they've tinkered with Justin Wayne to get him a little further back from his protection there, so he can clear the punt a little better. And they just need better blocking on special teams. The same thing as offensive line. So that's been a little tricky. If it comes down to an extra point or a field goal, it might be a problem.
All right, and finally, cue the music. It's Civil Conflict Week.
Before you called, I was I'm trying to get the trophy just right for Coach Diaco, to get the right logos on it and everything.
Okay, yeah. So
that just flabbergasted everybody. It's going to be interesting to see what Coach O'Leary and what Coach Diaco say this week. It was I was mentioned the Newport Media Days, and the clam bake takes place on Monday night. It was interesting seeing George walk up to Bob at the first point, and all of a sudden I rushed over with my iPhone camera, and all of a sudden there was a crowd around taking pictures. But they didn't have any conflict or anything. I think George understands a little bit of what Bob was trying to do. I'm not sure that a lot of times that anybody truly understands what Bob's trying to do, because he comes out of left field quite a lot with some of the things he says. You just got to kind of let it fly by and quote him if you want to. And this thing was all his works, and nobody in the athletic department knew anything about it, which probably would get a lot of coaches fired. But he's in his second year, and he's, I guess, enthusiastic is one word you could use. Some people think he's crazy. So he does a lot of things to try to get this program pumped up, and this one just didn't make any sense. If they're ever going to develop a rivalry, it should be somebody like Temple, who's close and everything. You don't see many rivalries between Florida schools and Connecticut schools, so we will see. I just don't think that has any impact at this point. I think it's pretty much lived its life, but I'm sure a lot of us will still be writing about it this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see that, UCF was I say now, because we're not one of the top teams in the American. We were then, and I can understand gunning for the top team. So I do understand that part. But, and I understand maybe a little bit of north, and they're the furthest north team, and we're one of the furthest south teams, so I can understand a little bit. But
well, he definitely came back and explained it that he did want to emulate the UCF program, and that makes perfect sense because they were the dominant team for the first 2 years of the conference, and we know Coach O'Leary is a great coach, and so there's nothing wrong with that part of it. When it first came out, it just on a tweet with a homemade trophy that had the wrong UCF logo on it and a clock counting down. I mean, I think he was just really, honestly, was just trying to bring some attention to. I think that was mid to late June, and just to bring some attention to football at a time when people in Connecticut are not thinking football, and they're still at least thinking a little bit. If they were 0-5, they would definitely discard it because basketball practice has started, and it would all be about UConn, which should be a top 20 team again in basketball. So, it's a tough job to get people interested in this sport here, and to put people in the seats. They want a winner, and it's going to take a little bit more time. I am more impressed with the progress that's being made this year than last year. Was just seemed like a disaster, but he was coming into a situation without much talent. So I think he's making the best of it right now. We got to give him the benefit of the doubt. If they have a chance, then they can win 4 games in the conference and get to a bowl game at 6-6. That would be, they don't need to go back to the Fiesta Bowl. They just need to get back to that, close to being to that point where they could go to a minor bowl and generate some interest. So I think that's the goal right now.
All right. Well, good luck to the Huskies and the Husky fans that come down here this week, and we will hopefully, I don't know anymore. I hope that we just have a good game that's competitive. I have no idea what's going to happen around here. So
I think it's hard to tell between these two right now, so we'll just have to watch and see what happens.
We are not used to this at all. So
I know.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, always glad to help another Jayhawk.
All righty.
All right, take care.
Rock chalk. All right, so what about our predictions?
Hey, you were right.
Yeah, they lost.
I guess the good money's betting against UCF.
Yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't you?
All right, so I'm going to buck that again, and I'm going to stick with the same score I predicted last week. UCF 13, UConn 12.
34-17, UConn.
Wow. All right, you were right against Tulane. So.
Yeah, I'm. I don't think there's any way.
Hey, how are the other sports doing?
I'm still going to go out there, though. I'm still going to be there, and I think everybody that is hearing our voices right now should be there as well, if you can. I know that a lot of you aren't around this area, but there's no reason not to go out there and support the team and
student-athletes.
The athletes.
They're kids.
Yeah. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports. Cross country finishes 4th at the Florida State Invitational. Meantime, track and field cross country will host the 3rd annual UCF Holiday Fun Run on December 31st. Up next, October 16th in Tampa for the South Florida U Invitational.
Men's golf finishes 10th at the Jackrabbit Invitational in Nebraska. I love the name of that. The Cows from Tampa won the rest of it. Up next, the Tavistock Collegiate Invitational in Orlando, October 18th.
Women's soccer drops a 2-0 game against Cincinnati on Sunday. That followed a 1-0 loss at East Carolina earlier in the week. The Pirates scored the only game's goal in the 89th minute. Next up, the Knights return home Thursday at 7 versus Memphis.
Meantime, fall ball underway for softball. You can catch the Knights Friday at 11 a.m. versus State College of Florida at the UCF softball complex.
Men's soccer dropped a pair of 2-1 decisions Saturday night at SMU and earlier versus FIU. Next up, home Wednesday at 7 versus Temple and Saturday versus Tulsa at 1 before the football game.
Tip time set at 7 for women's basketball game versus Florida up in Jacksonville December 30th. That's part of the American SEC Challenge.
Junior golfer Ashley Holder joins the field in a professional tournament at the IOA Classic at Aliqua Country Club in Longwood on October 9th and 10th. Tournament proceeds benefit Give the Kids the World and Feeding the Children Everywhere. Admission for the Classic is free.
At least volleyball can tame the Green Wave. UCF won 3-2 Saturday. Alas, the Knights fell 3-2 Sunday versus Houston. Up next, Friday night in Cincinnati.
UCF Baseball spent Saturday helping out kids who play in the Central Florida Miracle League. The fields accommodate wheelchairs and other walking assistance devices. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. Good for those student-athletes for taking part in that.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. This has been episode number 54. I'm Andrew Phegley.
Make it a great week, everyone. I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry, B-S-E-T-O-R-Y.